Powered by Sports Interaction, Canada Sportsbook.
Hello and welcome to Game Over Vancouver. I am your host today. I am Samantha Chang. You can find me on Twitter at SamanthaCP_. And I am joined on Game Over Vancouver today by Parker Hallowell. You can find him at Parker's Puck, both on YouTube and on Twitter. How are you doing today, Parker?
I'm good. I was doing great for about 8 minutes after the Canucks game started, and then after that, it's been a little downhill. But I'm happy to be here.
And I would be remiss to not tell everyone, Parker usually does a podcast with our other Game Over co-host, Canuck Clay, who is our, I would say, the most positive of the three hosts on here.
Yeah, but I'm converting him. I am working hard to bring him over to the dark side. I'm feeding him analytics day in, day out, and we'll see if we can get him turned around pretty soon too.
I think that's an uphill battle. I think Clay's maybe the most positive person I know, and I enjoy that about him, and I he balances out the rest of our pessimism. He's the homer for us.
Yeah, no, for sure. It is hard. I mean he still won't say the T word.
You got him to type it. You got him to type the word tank.
Kind of. He did like the share through YouTube, and it automatically puts the title in the tweet, but I'm calling it a win.
Oh, that's hilarious. If you are joining us, thanks for joining us. The Canucks lose 5-4 to the Pittsburgh Penguins. Before we jump into our first segment, going to give a shout out to our sponsor. Think you know what way it's going to go? Make your bet with Sports Interaction. Whether it's hockey, football, or basketball, Sports Interaction has you covered. Bet pre-game, live and play, or on one of our many prop bets. Sports Interaction makes it easy to deposit, play, and cash out. Join now and see all sports betting has to offer. Want to bet? Head to sportsinteraction.com/SDPN. That's sportsinteraction.com/SDPN. 18 plus, please play responsibly. Okay, so as I said, the Canucks lose again, 5-4 to the Pittsburgh Penguins. In yet another game that I feel like I have lived, the Canucks jumped out to a 3-0 lead in the first 8 minutes, chased Casey DeSmith from the net, and then proceeded to lose in absolute spectacular fashion. It was 3-3 by the end of the first. The Pens scored another 2 unanswered goals in the second. And the Canucks get one back in the fourth. Had a nice little burst of speed for Brock Besser to save an empty net goal. And that's kind of the story of the game for me. What was the story of the game for you?
For me, it was learning that Dustin Tokarski still exists, and apparently is good enough to not get scored on. And even the Dermott goal, he barely got scored on. Right, his glove was in the net. Yeah, it's just the same old story, right? I mean, they're hitting new heights with it being the first time they've blown, I think, a 3-goal lead in the first period in franchise history. So, I guess there's always lower depths to plummet to.
It's pretty amazing. I haven't checked this stat in a while, and I probably should have done it before this show, but even early on in the season, the Canucks were on pace to, I think, break the NHL record for number of blown multi-goal leads in the season. And they continue to do it. It's astonishing.
Yeah, it's a weird thing that feels like it has to be a coincidence until it keeps happening. And then it's eventually get to the point where it can't be a coincidence anymore.
For you, okay, I'm trying a new thing because a couple of episodes ago, someone told me that my segments were really negative.
I'm
Which,
glad
like,
to help
fair
here.
enough. I tend to view myself as more of a realist. I don't really view it as negativity, but in the spirit of positivity, and because Clay is in the chats saying he doesn't understand analytics and great to see his favorite co-host with his favorite co-host. What is one positive thing you could say about the game tonight?
It was a fun start. I mean, I like, Connor Garland's goal early. Maybe it's a trade value booster. Maybe that's the route we take positivity wise. You get a Garland goal, you get a Besser goal, and Luke Schenn gets 2 assists if you might be going down that route. So I think that's the positive route we can take here.
I like it. Drive up that trade value and hope that they actually, for once, trade people at the highest point of their trade value and not at the lowest.
Right. Well, Garland and Besser would not be the highest point of their trade value,
no,
but
I think that's come and
hopefully
gone.
Be higher.
For me, I thought I alluded to it, and I know it's like such a small thing, but I did actually made me really happy to see Besser really skating hard to stop that empty net goal. It was like, okay, you do have a little bit of pride left, a little bit of fight left. He wasn't just like kind of skating after it and letting them get another one. Uh, pretty much enjoyed that. Like you said, the first three goals were great, and
Hmm.
that's kind of it for me. What else stood out to you for the game? I mean, I think somebody in the chat has already said the Canucks need to completely rebuild their defense. I've said this before. Jim Rutherford started this season saying this defense is, quote, certainly adequate if they're healthy, which, in fairness, they haven't been, but I'm also just frankly not convinced that even if they were able to add back Tucker Pullman at this point, that it would make any kind of real difference.
Right. Yeah. I mean, at that point, you're taking out Ethan Bear, and I think you're getting worse.
Yeah.
So I don't know if that's, or maybe you're taking out Travis Dermott. I don't think making a fully healthy defense here is going to be nowhere near adequate enough. Especially, you look at the story has really been Ekman-Larsson and Myers. Drance put out his article earlier today that they're just the worst pairing in hockey, effectively. And it wasn't much better today. Oliver Ekman-Larsson at 5-on-5 had a okay game analytically, while Tyler Myers had probably one of his worst, and being at the very top of the list alongside Curtis Lazar. But yeah, you look at expected goals at 5-on-5. Tyler Myers 23%, not too good. Corsi of 30%, not too
Oh.
good. So it's the guys who are playing 20 minutes a night and getting paid combined $13 million. That's where the issue really is.
Yeah, for me, the biggest issue with OEL and Myers, and sorry if you're the person hoping that I'm a homer today, you might want to cover your ears right now. OEL and Myers get paid more than Kel McCarr and Devon Taves.
Hmm.
And to me, it's such an astonishing thing to consider given how bad they are, that eats up that much of the cap space for this team. And it's like what Jim Rutherford said yesterday to the Pittsburgh Tribune, that unraveling the Canucks cap situation has been more difficult than he expected it would be. And I don't know if he was over optimistic or if he just didn't have a sense of what it's like to be a Western team and not having maybe all the options that East Coast teams have in terms of trade value. But I don't know that it should have been that unpredictable. Like, looking at the players and the contracts they have, and then giving JT Miller the contract that they did, for him to then come out and say, well, it's been pretty hard. It blows my mind.
Yeah, it's a weird look when you're saying, oh, it's been hard to unravel this cap situation after we gave JT Miller $56 million starting next year, and we signed Ilya Mikheyev, who's been fine, fair enough, but they still gave him $5 million a year, and they extended Brock Besser at whatever that number was in the sixes. It's they've sort of made their own bet a little bit here too. And sure, it's not the Oliver Ekman-Larsson and Tyler Myers contracts; those were the previous regime. But they haven't even really seemed to have tried to unravel the cap situation yet.
Yeah, to me, it's still it's a little bit concerning. And, I came into this situation with, I will say, for me, optimism. I thought Rutherford's original assessment of the team was really fair. But I am, notwithstanding that's been like their first year, I'm struggling to see what their vision is in terms of where they are in their competitive cycle. And yeah, it's kind of more of the same.
Yeah, it doesn't feel like anything's changed yet, does it? Right? It's like, oh, they're still in the same spot in the standings. The defense is still bad. The only thing that's really changed is the goaltending has been worse, and that's put them in maybe a worse spot than they were when they were sort of in this streak, the positive streak last year. But yeah, their goalie's not hiding their mistakes anymore, right? It's really exposing what we kind of knew going in. We knew the defense wasn't going to be good, and it was like, okay, well, if Ekman-Larsson and Myers can be the players they were last year, maybe they'll be able to tread water. But they haven't. They've both taken a huge step down. And Quinn Hughes has been fine, and Ethan Bear's been fine. But again, all the wins that we've seen from the changes they have made have been so minor, right? Ethan Bear, great, awesome move that they made, but it's not enough, right?
No. And that's a great segue into our second segment. If you're here with us, the Canucks lose 5-4 to the Pittsburgh Penguins. I'm with at Parker's Puck, Parker Hallowell. Make sure you follow Parker, follow at SDPN Sports. The Canucks lose again. And to Parker's point that the Canucks goaltending isn't really bailing them out anymore. One tweet that caught my eye for a couple of reasons is Ian McIntyre, IMAC, notorious in the Vancouver market for probably being the most positive Canucks media member. And I say this with a smile because today we have another story about Canucks management being very aware of Canucks Twitter and the negative media and the negative stories, which was like, I'd love to talk about winning, win some games and I'll talk about winning. But IMAC, who is notoriously positive, tweeted after they blew the lead, quote, "Yeah, what else is new?" And he followed that up with, says something about how ineptly Canucks defended, turning 3-0 lead to 3-3 tie in less than 10 minutes, is that their best player was goalie Spencer Martin. And I thought that was such an interesting tweet because I think that for the last few years, going back to Markstrom, going back to the season before they let Markstrom walk, this is a team that has been, I think, better than they are, better than their full roster is, because they have relied on their goaltenders playing out of their mind, pretty much Vezina level hockey every season, just to get them into the playoffs. And for some reason, management, whether old management or new management, seems to have just overestimated the team on the basis of almost underestimating the goaltender.
Yeah, absolutely. And the crazy thing is, right, you look at tonight, for example, where you have Martin allowing 5 goals on 36 shots, and we're saying that he was the best player or one of their best players tonight, especially defensively. It's a huge indictment. When you have a team that has had a very mediocre defense, especially ever since that whole Tanev Markstrom Toffoli off season. And then they had Thatcher Demko come in and be one of the best goalies in the league, probably top 10, if not maybe like top 7. And you get your first little bit of goalies not playing well, where they're putting up sub 900, which every team goes through. But Spencer Martin didn't allow 5 goals because he was performing like an 861 goaltender tonight. He allowed 5 goals because the Penguins were everywhere. They were all like, there were stretches for like 3 minutes at a time where they were just passing the puck around, getting prime chances in the slot. And it's honestly like, I don't know how you expect to not allow 5 goals in a game like that, because it was just piling on the pressure. And Martin was absolutely okay while the rest of the defense couldn't do anything.
Yeah, and I genuinely don't know what they plan to do with this. When you're losing the way you are, but Colin Delia has been good for being the third string goaltender. Spencer Martin's been good. They've both outperformed, I think, everyone's expectations of who they are, to the point where we've had enough discussion of Thatcher Demko underperforming that people, before he got injured, people were saying, should we be starting Martin over Demko? And then it was, should we be starting Delia over Martin? If you're at the point where your third string goaltender is in the conversation for being up there with Demko, part of it is that Demko has taken a step back. He's not been the same goalie he was the last couple of seasons. I do wonder if that offseason surgery is bothering him and has somehow hindered his game. But to me, you still can't pin it on Demko. You've got a lot of people being like, well, Demko should just play the way he was. Well, Demko was playing out of his mind. Like, there are not very many goaltenders who can play at the level he has been for the last few years, consistently year in, year out. Like Marc-Andre Fleury is a 3-time Cup winner. He has had atrocious seasons. You can't count on goalies doing that. There are very few goaltenders who are that consistent. And to me, it's just outrageous that management continues to just be like, well, it's the rest of the team in front of them is fine, when it's clearly not.
Yeah, it's a team that is just clearly designed to outscore their problems. And tonight was the perfect example of a night where they should have, right?
Yeah.
They go out, they score 3 goals early. All you have to do is now get 2 less goals than the other team for the rest of the game. It shouldn't be that hard. You're against Dustin Tokarski, like I said. You're against a team that, just flew back into Pittsburgh because I think they were all in Montreal for a funeral. They come back. Like, this isn't a team that, should be, well rested and just waiting to sort of trap you into a lull and then come out firing. But when you're only putting up 24 shots in a game where you're up 3-0 at one point, when you're getting outshot 20-10 in the first period alone, and then by that time you're already behind 10 minutes into the second period, and there's no way for you to come back from that, because you can't rely on your defense to bail you out. Your forwards are going to maybe score 3 or 4 goals a game, but you're allowing. I think this game should have taken them. They were at 3.9 goals against average coming into this one. They allow 5. They got to be right at 4 at this point.
I'm amazed they're at 4, given how many 5-goal against games they've had.
Yeah, the occasional one helps that, I think, but it is second worst in the NHL.
That's I actually don't even know what to do with that stat.
No, it's because it's absurd. It doesn't make any sense, right? You look at other teams that allow a bunch of goals, and they're all the worst teams in the league except Buffalo, because Buffalo also scores more goals than anyone else right now. The Canucks are 9th in goals for per game, but they're 2nd in goals against per game, and that completely overshadows any success that you have offensively.
Yeah. Tony Smoluk in the chat says, it pains me to say it, and I know it does pain Tony because he's one of the most optimistic fans I know. The tank is on. Playing Martin and Delia clinches it. What do you think of that?
I think the playing Martin and Delia parts were done, and I don't think it matters who you're playing at this point. I think playing Oliver Ekman-Larsson and Tyler Myers for 22 minutes a night clinches it. I think having them on the team clinches it, unless you're playing Quinn Hughes like 32 minutes a night, which is just a terrible idea. I think this team, best case for them, like if they actually play well, is they're about a 500 hockey team, and that's not going to be enough. It'll be enough to finish 21st in the NHL. But I think with this loss, point percentage wise, they should be around 26th in the standings right now, which, Clay and I were talking about this last night, where every single loss, sure, the extra 1% chance you get Bedard might not be worth it, but you are moving up a draft pick every time there as well. So it is time to start accumulating those losses. And maybe that involves, shipping out some players earlier than later, especially after a game like today, where this is not a defensive core that's going to bring you any success.
Tony says he's glad we recognize his pain. I recognize it because I live it. I live it all the time, For however negative anyone thinks I am about this team, I want them to win on a sustained basis. And my biggest nightmare, Parker, is actually what you said, is being a 500 team, because that gets them to the absolute middle, another 16th to 20th pick, which is fine, but it doesn't really move the dial. They've given up a lot of picks the last 5-6 years for a team that really should have been accumulating a lot of picks, for a team that says their strength is scouting. They really haven't done anything with what they say their strengths are, and it's so frustrating. And so for me this season, it's actually more frustrating when they string together wins, as much as I enjoy a good win, because I don't see them being better than a 500 team on the basis of this defense. And
I was just gonna say, this game really feels like one that they were going to tie up and then lose in overtime, right? They were going to get a point, and then it's kind of like, what's the point? Yeah.
What they need to do, as much as it sucks, is lose. And even if you can't get Bedard, move out your best assets, get a haul of picks for a really deep draft, and see what Alvina and Rutherford can do with that.
Coming into this game, I think Canucks had the 7th pick. I think Philly won last night. So, Yeah, if you can move that up, if you can get behind Montreal, right? The other teams might be a little harder. Arizona's really not good. San Jose, Anaheim, but like Montreal should be passable if you just lose a couple extra games. And of course, the players aren't going to do it, right? That's management's job. Management's job is to sort of ensure the losses by making the moves early. The problem is, and this is something that I would normally think, 1 year into a new management regime, I would expect, yeah, they know what they're doing, right? They're gonna make the smart move. But after signing JT Miller, which not in hindsight, like at the time was pretty clearly a move that I wasn't a fan of, and a lot of people weren't. Um, I feel like they're only going to end up trading Bo Horvat because they have to, right? Not because they want to, not because it's the right move, but because they're going to have no other choice because Horvat's going to force his way out because he's going to want more money than the Canucks are willing to spend. And fair play to him. I wouldn't want less money to play here either. So yeah, it's management's job to make those moves, get the Canucks more picks higher in the draft order, and ideally ice a team that can be competitive a couple years down the line. Because I don't want to be sitting here in, April of 2025 having the same conversation.
Yeah, I absolutely feel like I've been saying the same thing since 2020.
Yeah.
Okay, we are going to totally switch gears for our third segment, because there's only so many things you can say about blowing the lead again. Parker is one of this year's Botchford Project participants, and your article came out 6 days ago, I believe. Everyone should go read it. Can you walk us through how you found out you were going to take part, and also your Botchford Project night?
Sure. Yeah, it was. I obviously it was one of the things that I wanted to apply to it last year, and then I kind of got imposter syndrome. And I'm like, why would I shouldn't do that, and so I didn't do it. And then yeah, so I applied. They sort of just send out an email saying, yeah, you've been selected. They don't give you enough info at first, and then like a week later they send you everything. Yeah, it was an absolute blast. From going to morning skate, sitting there, sort of being surrounded by the people who you've heard a million times, right? Like there would be times where I'm just sitting next to Drance and he's talking. I'm like, I kind of forget that I'm part of the conversation, like because I've heard his voice a million times on the radio, and I'm supposed to just be listening. But yeah, sitting in morning skate. That was also the day of the Brock Besser drama, right? When he was supposed to be scratched and then didn't end up being scratched. So it was definitely quite a bit of mayhem. But no, all in all, it was great experience. Sitting up in the press box, writing an article, which the reason I had that imposter syndrome, I've never written an article really, right?
Wow.
I turned one of my videos into an article for the application process, but sort of just proving to myself that maybe I can try. And yeah, it was a blast.
That's awesome. What was like the highlight of the day for you?
I think it was just being like in the locker room. I thought it was a super cool experience to just sort of see everyone in a more casual setting, right? You have all the media guys, like there's like a 15-minute gap between when everyone's in the locker room and then they have like a team meeting, and then so all the media is just waiting for Boudreaux in the other room, and you have just everyone's just sort of sitting around hanging out, and I kind of thought it would be more like uptight and like professional, and sort of like everyone's sort of like all suits and doing their jobs, but everyone's just it was very casual. um yeah, just the whole being a part of the seeing, I guess, just seeing behind the scenes was really cool.
That's awesome. Um, if you're just joining us, we recapped the game quite a bit. The Canucks lose 5-4. We are talking to Parker at Parker's Puck on Twitter. Make sure you go follow Parker about his day with the Botchford Project. Of course, doing a post-game show now, it's hard to, we have to acknowledge that Jason Botchford was, of course, I think the master of the post-game breakdown, and why it does a great job too. Hard to follow in those footsteps in this market. Related to that, we were talking today, Parker and I were talking earlier today about a new story about how Canucks management is quote unquote very aware of the negative media. What would you say about that, having spent time kind of behind the scenes with with the beat reporters and with the media.
Yeah, I think it is such a weird, it's such a weird point to make. And it's a point that lots of like angry people online like to make, like, oh, it's the media's fault, they're bringing the mood down. And you're in the locker room, being in the locker room there, and seeing the way the media's interacting with the players. I don't think it's the media's fault that the players aren't going out and playing well, right? Like I'm standing there while like Drance is having a candid conversation with Spencer Martin about how he's not allowed to interview goalies after the whole Luongo, like after Luongo, they made that not a thing anymore. So they're joking around about that, and like everyone's sort of like colleagues in that sense. Like everyone sort of understands each other's job. But yeah, like the media doesn't want to be negative. You look at us, right? We don't want to be here. You're like, oh, the team lost again and they blew another lead. Like, oh, it would be so much more fun if we were talking about a team that had 28 wins on the year, and are pushing for a playoff spot, and maybe are a contender, right? It's they're not negative by choice. They're negative out of necessity because they haven't had anything positive to speak about.
Yeah, I feel you. Having started doing this and having to talk about the games after the games, it is really, really hard to talk about losses. Like, as much as people say, it's easy to repeat the same things and to be down on this team, like, you can only say it so many times before it gets boring. Like, it's hard to find different angles.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, because this is what I did this a bit last year, where I would do sort of a post game after the games, and if they were losing, I'd be like, okay, well, there's gonna be like a quarter of the people actually listening than normal than if they won. No, I'm gonna say the exact same things as I did last time. Oh, Ekman-Larsson wasn't playing very good, and Demko almost bailed them out but couldn't get it done, and all the same things over and over again. Yeah, it just gets so tedious and mind numbing, and you have to get a little creative, right? You have to think of some different angles. You have to try to find maybe a bit more of a negative story that goes in a different direction, just so you have a job still, right? So people still have something to listen to. The media's been put in a situation where they have to appease a fan base because the hockey team isn't appeasing them, right? They have to keep them interested, in order to, satiate a market that wants good hockey coverage and content, when the team doesn't provide that themselves.
On the topic of finding a storyline, you wrote about Neil Zoman. I think I said that right. I never
Mhm.
know. How did you decide on the topic, and kind of what led you to that story?
Yeah, so coming into it, they basically tell you, a couple, like it was like a Saturday. They send an email with all the info, and they say, okay, or Drance basically sends you an email on Saturday, Thomas Drance, and says, um, you know, let's have a call, 30 minutes at some point during the week. You tell me your story, right? What are you writing on? And I'll sort of give it a thumbs up, thumbs down, help you build that story out. So I came with basically two story ideas. One of them was based on Elias Pettersson. I brought it up to Thomas Drance, and Drance said, I've asked him about that 1,000 times. He will not divulge any of it. It is top secret. And I said, okay. My other thing was Niels Oman, because no one really knew who he was coming into the year. There haven't been any coverage of him, any articles with him, any sits down with him at all. He was basically this mysterious Swedish free agent who went undrafted, twice, and then was drafted in the 6th round by Colorado. Never even went to a development camp, a rookie camp, stayed in Sweden. And I thought it would just be an interesting story, right? How do you go from being, basically an undiscovered, forgotten about player in Europe, to finding a spot on a fourth line of an NHL team out of training camp, when again no one expected you to get that far? So, sort of wrote the story about that. You get to we got to sit down with Niels for about five or so minutes, and asked him some questions, got him to sort of fill in the blanks, in the story. And yeah, I just wanted to sort of go a route that other people might not go, right? I didn't want to go I did want to go the Elias Pettersson route, but in a sort of different way. But I thought, sort of going into more of a depth player might be an interesting take.
That's great. If you're here with us, Parker Hallowell is with us. He wrote about Neil Zoman, and it's been published 6 days ago on the Canucks website, so make sure you go check that out. Thank you guys for joining us. The Canucks lose to the Penguins 5-4 tonight. They blow a 3-goal lead in the first period and kind of never recover from it. If you are looking for some more positive coverage, come back on Thursday when the Canucks take on the Tampa Bay Lightning, and I will leave you in the very capable and positive hands of @Canucks Clay, who is both mine and Parker's co-host. So make sure you go follow Parker at Parker's Pucks, follow at SDPN Sports. I'm Samantha Chang. Do not follow me on Twitter. I am very annoying. I'm sure you know that already. The Canucks lose again. Thanks so much for joining us, Parker. Thanks for listening, everyone, and we'll see you Thursday.
Thank you.